The podcast where John Doring, Larry Davis, my co-host here, we talk about hope and inspiration and really cool, amazing stories. And today we've got a gentleman with us that you're really going to love. His name's Cleo Lewis. He's an Arizona native, right?
Well, I'm a native, but I'm actually from Kansas. I'm an Arizona transplant.
There you go, an Arizona transplant. And Mr. Lewis has the Cleo N Lewis Ministries. Is that's what you run? And started. Tell us a little bit about that. What do you guys do?
Well, we do a little bit of everything and a whole lot of nothing. So what a lot of people would tell us, but we actually, when I started it, I was doing staff ministry for about 10 years and kind of walked into doing a nonprofit. And actually my pastor kind of told me that I was hiding in the church. So I'm an outreach person. I need to be out doing that. So I started this to do outreach, and we deal with first responders, of course, since I've got experience dealing with them and helping them. The homeless community that predominant in Sunny Slope, as well as because I'm a veteran, we also do veteran-specific ministry. And the difference with that is it's a ministry. A lot of times when you work with the homeless, they want to call you a service provider.
Sure.
And I'm not a service provider. I don't compete with other service providers. It's a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my life experiences has just caused me to be able to mold into that.
I love that.
And to make it happen for other people.
Well, thank you so much for your service. So U.S. Air Force veteran, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for your service. And I'm sure the vets have a lot of stuff that they need help with, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be almost a full-time job in and of itself, I would think.
It is. It quite is. And a lot of times when you run into veterans, like 1 out of 4 people are actually veterans. And we try to embrace that because I was a veteran when I first encountered homelessness.
Sure.
And after about 10 years of bouncing around and trying to figure out what the best thing to do was, I tried to avoid getting help.
Mm-hmm.
But when you run into a veteran, you got to link up.
Yeah.
You got to be real dynamic.
Right.
And we're going to create change.
Sure.
And we're going to engage you. We're going to have a conversation. And I want to find out what happened and how to address that. And sometimes in ministry, we do too much talking versus listening.
Sure.
When you're talking to a veteran, you need to listen to find out what's going on, why are they where they're at, and not that you can do something, but you're going to do something.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting when you first run into someone. And I used to withdraw from people when I was going on through all the things that I was going through. I would just hide from people, and I would find different ways to hide. And what helps me is I know who I'm looking for out there. You see, the person I'm looking for is a guy named Cleo Lewis.
Absolutely.
And it's like when you define homelessness, we kind of use the pie. You're either dealing with a person that's dealing with substance abuse issues, mental health issues, or the economy is caught up with them in their life situation. And what kind of helps me is I had all 3 of those elements going on.
Sure.
So the reason why I say I'm looking for somebody that was dealing with the same thing I was going on, if I could have gotten out of homelessness, the odds were insurmountably against me of ever being able to progress. I mean, thinking about what was going on with my story, my life journey, I shouldn't have made it.
Wow. Yeah.
I just shouldn't have. It was just, when I think about it, and I encounter someone and said, yes, I understand you had it bad. But I was that person that made it worse for me.
Yeah. Dig in your own hole a little bit, huh?
Yeah. I mean, you dig a deep hole and then you complain that you can't get out of it.
Yeah.
And
so going back to Kansas, you born in Kansas, right?
Yeah.
You came to Arizona.
Yeah.
When did you come to Arizona? What age?
Oh goodness, I was 12 or 13. My parents had gotten a divorce, and both my parents were in the military. My mom had left the military. My dad had just retired from there. And of course, he got out of Vietnam, had a drinking issue, and that just destroyed the marriage. So we moved there probably late 60s. And if you can imagine Tucson, Arizona in the late 60s, it was
it's a different animal, huh?
Completely different, small town. And it was just the culture shock of showing up in Tucson, because we were military kids. And military kids, we have our own distinct flavor. We have a different idea of what it is outside of the base. Everybody outside of a military base, we're kind of stay away from those folks. The civil rights movement was going on in full swing, and all of a sudden we show up at Tucson, Arizona, predominantly a large Hispanic community. Never had that much exposure to the Hispanic culture, and we got immersed in it. The first thing I did is a few years later, I said, you know what, I'm going to join the Air Force. I got out of school at 17 years old, and I was going out to see the world.
Yeah.
All of my peers, they were either going to prison, they were going to go work at the mines. There was this big, crazy company in Tucson called Hughes, or they were going to go work there. And neither one of those seemed like a career choice for me.
So you went into the Air Force, enlisted.
I enlisted in the Air Force. I said I was going out to see the world. 17 years old, Vietnam War was in full swing. I really didn't think much about going to war. Didn't think that was going to happen. So it was like I wanted to go see the war. I wanted to go see the world. I wanted to go participate in the adventure. I had a friend that was supposed to go into the Army. He was a bodybuilder, and he flunked the physical.
Oh, wow.
My real job, we were going to go into the United States Army. I was going to go to the Defense Language School, study Russian. Actually, that's where I was going to go.
Sure.
I'd be rich now.
Presidio.
Presidio. We were going to go Presidio, Defense Language School, and he flunked the physical. I still have issues with him to this day because of that. So that career job went in. I was standing with some group of guys that had just gotten in. A guy in a green uniform came hollering at us. Said, "Sir, I'm not in the Army yet." And he started hollering, and I said, I think I'll go talk to the Air Force guy. So I went, signed up for the Air Force, spontaneous. And a few minutes later, there was a guy in a blue uniform hollering at us, telling us what we were going to do next.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
Went to Texas, filled in a dream sheet, and that's why they call it a dream sheet. I had all these places I was going to go experience the rest of the world. And for all of that adventure, me signing up, they said, "You're going to Glendale." And I thought, Glendale, California, I can do this. I can do this. And it turned out to be Glendale, Arizona, Luke Air Force Base.
Oh, man.
And of course, Luke Air Force Base, I don't know if you've been there. You got the gunnery range right next to Luke.
Yeah.
They've got two other daunting places that they can send you to. Ajo. There was an Ajo Air Station at that time. Yeah. It used to be an old, dilapidated radar station. I got to do a little tour duty there in Gila Bend.
Yeah.
So that started out, 18 years old at the main gate, waving in traffic. It was quite a shock.
Man, so you saw the world.
I saw the world, all of 125 miles away. So my big thing was I got to go to Thailand.
Oh, cool.
And towards the end of the Vietnam War, we were the only people that actually knew anything about combat.
How long were you in the Air Force for?
How long?
Yes.
8 years.
Okay.
So that was, Wow. My biggest warfare story is we were engaged in the last battle of the Vietnam War. And just think, I was a law enforcement specialist.
Yeah.
We didn't sign up for that, but that's what we ended up doing. We ended up participating in that. So that 8 years, I was like, the first time we re-enlisted, I had a family, and it was like, what am I going to do with my life? I wanted to go sign up. I wanted to go work for the government, of course. I wanted to be a U.S. Marshal, and the president at that particular time, which I can't remember, froze hiring. So I ended up saying, hey, I'll go out and I want to be a Phoenix police officer, see if they'll hire me. It was a double dog dare. I double dog dared. They double dog hired me. And I really enjoyed it.
Sure.
The first couple of years, I was a patrolman out in the west side of town, a place called Maryville.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Maryville, all the streets are like spaghetti. And if you know the streets real good, you get follow people around. I worked late at night, and chances are I knew where people were going before they knew where they were going out of Maryville. And Maryville had something interesting that happened. They had gangs. They had a gang problem that the city kind of really didn't acknowledge.
Kind of kept it under the rug kind of deal?
Yeah, kind of an under the rug type thing. And then we had a lot of cultural upheaval. California initiated something kind of interesting, the 3 strikes law. So people were getting out of California. So guess where they were coming? They were coming. Phoenix was the next large city
stop,
from LA. And then we had the Crip blood explosion. And the media exposure. We had an interesting incident. We had some kids actually shot at the fire truck.
Oh, wow.
And fire trucks in Phoenix are red. And that kind of convinced the city that red, blue, Crips versus Bloods was a real deal. Because of the fact I had worked with Hispanic gangs, all of a sudden they decided I was going to be a gang intelligence person. I didn't grow up. Where did I tell you I grew up? I grew up in Kansas. So all of a sudden, because of what I looked like, I became the expert, so to speak, on how to deal with this particular phenomenon that was probably one of the most dangerous things that we ever dealt with.
So gang intelligence officer, were you undercover, or is that another?
Well, at that particular time, undercover kind of was, you took your uniform off and you start working cases, and then you put your uniform on and you start working cases. It wasn't as sophisticated as it was kind of today. My training film was a Starsky and Hutch type thing. So we just went out to get things done. It turned into, at first we got all this information, and then it's like we had so much information on what was going on. We were going back and forth to the coast, going to California and learning so much. It was like, what do you do with this?
Right. Yeah.
So then they said, well, you need to go operational with this. So we started doing drug cases, and this was during the crack cocaine epidemic. Could you imagine at first, you go to work, you're carrying 3 guns. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And then you get real casual with it. And it's just the course of life. So imagine a guy that's standing there in a t-shirt, athletic shirt, pair of shorts. And the one thing that kind of got me stuck doing it is they let you drink beer.
Oh, wow.
That was a historical problem for me.
Yeah.
My dad was an alcoholic. All of a sudden I said I wasn't going to be like him, and I was just like him. I like to drink too much beer. So I went to go do a drug deal. We're used to dealing with kids in the project that were selling dope.
Right.
The big thing is, surprise, we're the police. They would tell us who they got the dope from, and we'd walk up the scale. The people that we ran into this dope house weren't those little kids. The guy looked at me and he said, "You look like a police officer." You know what? I never had anyone ever tell me that.
Wow.
It shocked me. He said, "Hey, have you ever used dope before?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, you don't look like all these other people on the line." I should have left. I should have just turned around and left. But my ego said, I got to make this case.
Yeah.
And what happened was, he said, "You're going to smoke dope today." And we were having a debate. And I was like, I said, I was getting ready to tell him, hold my beer. I was a pretty good boxer. My plan was I was going to hold my beer. While he grabbed my beer, I was going to punch him. And then I heard a bolt of a rifle behind me. And I heard,
sound, huh?
and I heard that distinct sound of an AK-47 and I felt being pressed in the back of my head. I was like, hand me that pipe. I took a hit of cocaine, and it was almost like 10 minutes later, what I didn't know is you come back to normal. I completed the drug deal. I said, okay, so now sell me my dope. Guy sold me the dope. I walked out of there. My cover officer was gone somewhere else. He was the one that should have been watching me. But because of the fact the tactics were so bad that I employed, I went back. I told them what happened. They drug tested me that day, and it came back negative.
Oh, wow.
So part of the illusion was not the technology or drug tests. They're a lot better now. But
Sure.
Back then, they weren't that good. I kind of believed the illusion that maybe I didn't take a hit of that.
Yeah.
Trust me, I did.
Sure.
So the next 4 to 6 weeks was convincing myself that the cravings that I was having to use crack cocaine weren't real.
Yeah.
Went out and done it again. Told them that I didn't want to do this particular assignment again. Wasn't going to do it. All of a sudden, I got into a fight, got injured in the fight, got hurt, crashed my undercover car into the back of a police station. They went out, and all of a sudden, they found out that drug test they did at the hospital. I think I still set a record at that hospital being the highest concentration of crack cocaine of anybody that ever lived.
Oh my gosh. That's
it was just crazy.
Cleo. That's crazy.
And of course, once the police department found out what had happened, they went crazy too.
Yeah.
So I just remember them escorting me out to the police department. They said, "Yeah, we're going to get you some help." And I thought, how are you going to get me some help? And just as they told me, they said, "Well, you'll have to get your job back later." They walked me out of the police station. They said, "One more thing." I said, "What would that be?" They says, "You're under arrest."
Wow.
And it was like, wow.
Man, so they put you in that situation for your work.
Yeah.
And then just didn't take care of you, didn't follow up with you, didn't support you?
It went bad.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of who I am, I'm going to take responsibility for that.
Sure.
But we can always go back. I've had the privilege of training undercover officers now to have that, use my story as a discussion forum, to say, you better have a plan, because if this goes bad, someone could have gotten killed in there.
Yeah.
I walked away from something that the odds were I should not have walked away from that.
How long had you been an officer prior to that event?
That was about 7.5 years.
Wow.
So, losing that career, knowing that I was headed to prison, I can't even explain to you what that particular feeling was like. How many times I thought, you know what, I'm going to kill myself. If I don't kill me before I get to prison, they're going to kill me while I'm in prison. So, when that happened, it was, it's kind of interesting. You guys play golf?
Yeah, a little bit. I try, but I mean,
there's a thing in golf called a mulligan.
Yeah. It's a do-over.
Yeah, you get a do-over.
Yeah.
In real life, you don't get a lot of do-overs.
Yeah.
And there was no way I was going to mulligan my way out of this.
Sure.
I couldn't even buy a mulligan.
Yeah.
I kind of thought about, it went back to my faith. How am I going to survive this? What is the hope in this crazy experience? Am I going to die in prison? A lot of times the common attitude is when someone like me is all of a sudden is going to prison, there's people cheering.
Yeah, you're a police officer, right?
I mean, you deserve
kind
the
of a
worst.
target, man.
You've tarnished a badge. You deserve the worst that could ever happen to you. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I'm supposed to do 5 years in prison, and there's two sides cheering that something could happen to me, and it's okay. And I had a long discussion with God.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not going to die at this. If there's any hope, I need to get through this.
Yeah.
And, by the grace of God, I got through it.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get through it as spectacular as somebody else might have thought that they could get through it? No, it was an ugly recovery because I got out. I couldn't get my life restarted. I still was dealing with this addiction. And, goodness, over the next 15 years after getting out, I had went through a marriage that I lost my first marriage when I first went in custody, remarried shortly after. When I moved back down to Tucson, they wouldn't actually parole me back to Phoenix. That was the stipulation that you cannot go back to Phoenix. So I moved down to Tucson, restarted my life, married this adorable person. She had to deal with all the luggage of my addiction, 6 restraining orders, and 3 marriages. Wow, I end up back in Phoenix with all of this, wandering the streets, homeless. And come on, I mean, when someone looks at the totality of that and say, you can't make it, it worked. I ended up out of the shelter.
So were you at Cass? Is that?
Yes.
Yep. You were
I actually, interesting enough, I'm a board member of Cass now, but I actually lived at Cass. I was at a VA program, and my recovery was kind of remarkable in that a 25-year-old caseworker kept calling me Mr. Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't understand why anybody would refer to me by a title. And it was that helped me restore my dignity. And it's something that I treasure now, that I find a dignity point in everybody that I talk to, and I restore that hope. Hey, this doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. But let's find the hope in this. We can do better.
Mm-hmm.
We can help you do better.
So you didn't stay at the shelter forever, obviously.
No. Pretty close to a year. Was it easy? Nope. Was it a little tough? Back then, we had the place called the Zone. You had to travel through the Zone to get to anywhere. So you had to make a decision whether you were going to stay sober every day.
Yeah.
And you got to make that same decision now.
Sure.
So, the hope that I would share with someone is just to think what a guy named Cleo had went through. The odds of me being able to recover and survive this were astronomically against me. But by the grace of God, here am I.
Yeah.
So when I deal with people that are homeless, I know that there's 10,000 of them that we count now.
Yeah.
I know that number may be higher. I can't fight that because I'm looking at the one individual, especially if I'm looking at a family, they're predominantly the person that's standing in front of me, and I'm trying to restore the hope of this disastrous situation or the accumulation of life's journey that's got them homeless. So what are we going to do now? I know that for a family, it's going to take about 3 months to get them. If they went to go get help today, it would take 3 months for them normally to get through the entire cycle.
Wow.
Of being next to get into a shelter. So I offer them an opportunity. I didn't have a real warm, fuzzy relationship with God when all of this stuff was going on.
Sure.
But I developed one. Said, would you allow me the privilege of praying for you?
Mm-hmm.
Can we pray? I mean, you're at a situation where it's almost hopeless. Can we ask God to help? Can we put your faith in something beyond the obvious?
Man, it's powerful.
I mean, can I share with you what I felt when I had to turn my life over to God? Would you allow God to intervene on your behalf? We don't have, a lot of times when people are homeless, they don't have a choice but to trust something outside. They've tried to do everything they could do. When you have an addiction where that addiction is so overpowering to where it's got you actually out on the street corner, laying next to a car to get your next hit, I believe you got what's called 15 minutes of change. You got 15 minutes to make a decision. It takes 15 minutes to go get high again. It takes 15 minutes to go do something that maybe a lady would not want to do to try to sustain herself. We've got 15 minutes to help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Only God can make that 15 minutes count.
Sure.
So in that, we take the hopelessness of that particular situation and we make it hopeful. Cleo Lewis Ministries is that type ministry to where I can take somebody and put them in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
I can refer them to a recovery. But we do that in that 15 minutes of first contact. I don't know anyone else in the city that does that other than somebody else's that's trusting God.
Yeah.
We connect up with other ministries. That's what it is. I'm a bridge ministry. I create a bridge because I didn't have that bridge.
Right.
There was a big gap, a big hole, and I kept falling in the hole wondering, why do I keep falling in this same hole?
Yeah.
Speaking of bridges, when you left Cass at some point, what kind of help did you have to get from where you were to where you are?
I had a pastor that he had what I call cowboy sense. He wasn't scared of me. I remember walking up to a church in the neighborhood where I lived at. I had a cold beer, 40-ounce beer, had my pack of cigarettes, hid everything, hid the beer in the oleander outside of the church. I heard him say, if anyone needs prayer, come on down to the aisle. And that's what was driving me. I just got through having an argument with God over, is this a real church? He says, go to this church. And I heard it loud and clear. I knew I heard from God. And I was saying, there's nothing but old people there. So I walk into this church and I didn't get hit by lightning. So I look at this guy and he says, I think I know you. And I was like, you don't know me, buddy. Don't do that. You don't know me from anybody. And he says, your name is Cleo Lewis. You're in Teen Challenge.
Wow.
He said, you don't need prayer. You need to get your act together. Sometimes we have to give people the opportunity to speak into our lives and kind of hold us accountable. You remember when I said earlier, you don't get a mulligan over this.
Yeah.
You can't there's a consequence for everything you do. And I was dealing with a lot of consequences. And he called me on where I was at. So it kind of created a response, and he held me accountable, and he loved me right where I was at. He actually cared what happened to me.
Yeah.
And I've learned that we have to start caring what happens to people. We have to be engaged in their life. And what I do is I try to find those families that I'm talking to is I try to reconnect them with a church body, a pastor that can become engaged in what their lives are. We try to train outreach people to do outreach that reaches towards what's really going on with those people.
Mm-hmm.
And they become family, they become friends. We start reconnecting them with the community that they lost contact with. A lot of people have burned their bridges. They don't have a safety net. That's what creates homelessness. We lose our safety net out there. It's something that can happen to almost anybody.
So would you say, I mean, all you've been through and all the challenges, what brought you out of the abyss, so to speak? I mean, is that your faith in God? Is that hard work? Is it a combination of everything? Is there a little bit of luck in there? I mean, what brought you out of it?
The luckiest part I can say is I reached out and I realized that I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no mechanism for me to ever be successful with this, and I was successful in failure, and that failure caused me to reach out. I am the original prodigal son.
Yeah.
I started studying what the Bible said, and I started finding a scripture. My favorite scripture, Philippians 1:6. And it says, be ye confident in this very thing, that he which begun a good work in you will continue it. That gave me hope.
Sure.
I didn't have nothing else but that one single scripture and a crack pipe.
Oh, man.
And after a while, I didn't need the crack pipe anymore because I relied on what that particular scripture said.
Right.
And, if somebody's got a piece of foil and a lighter, it's like, you know what? That's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
You're going to have to find something else that gives you hope. And I hope you will find a knucklehead like Cleo Lewis is that's going to engage you for about 10 times until we can get you somewhere else.
So, man, just a fantastic story, Cleo. Really, really appreciate it. It's unbelievable where you've come from, what you've done. So tell the people out there that are watching how, if they're in a spot where they need it, how do they get a hold of you? How do they find help?
I'm going to do something crazy. Okay. I'll say it like this. 480-384-0271. There, I did it on a podcast.
Wow. Yeah.
If you don't find someone else, call Cleo Lewis. I may not be able to call you back right away, but if you send me a call, send me a text, or you call me, I'm going to respond to you. I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to be engaging with you. I'm going to try to refer you to some tangible resource that can get you out of the situation. And the first step you have to do is reach out of whatever you stepped yourself into.
There it is, folks. Absolutely amazing journey. Mr. Cleo N Lewis and the Cleo N Lewis Ministries. Thank you so much for being here over coffee. Larry, appreciate you. And there's just another fantastic inspirational story to lift you up and bring you out of where you're at. Have a great day.